The following is a full interview from the Border Battle with King and CJ. Tune into the Border Battle Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11 to noon on Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube Live, or OSU Student Radio KXZY. Welcome back into Studio 318 here in the Paul Miller Journalism Building. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ on Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube Live, Border Battle On Demand, Facebook.com/Border Battle Show, or OSU Student Radio KXZY. I'm King, he's CJ. Between us, Luke Garza joining the program right now. Luke is a beat writer for Pistols Firing, and you were in Tulsa covering the Big 12 wrestling tournament this weekend. Oklahoma State. Now, I teased it with things are getting a little bit boring. Is that the case? Like, this is 6 straight, I believe, now titles, 4 individual titles. I think there was 2 seconds and 3/3 or something like that as well, and just a dominating performance over the next closest, which I think was UNI. Is this starting to get boring? It's probably not a fair way to phrase it, but I mean, like, is this the ultimate goal for some of these guys?
No. Excuse me. The Big 12 title is never really a goal for any of these guys. It's expected. John Smith's won 20 conference titles. This is the 6th in a row. They're going to win it, assumedly in the next few years, just in the foreseeable future. But they don't necessarily they're not the favorite to win the national title. Like, Penn State has that honor right now, and Ohio State is, not far behind them. And the finals are in Cleveland this year, so take that how you will. I'm not sure how much of an edge that gives them. But with that being said, they dominate the Big 12. OU's not, what they used to be. And the other programs up there, West Virginia, University of Northern Iowa, some of the other programs just don't have, like, the resources and the history that OSU has. OSU's kind of like a giant among boys, to, kind of phrase that there for you. They're just way ahead of the pack in the Big 12. And so there you see the lopsided victory there. But come nationals, it's not going to be like that. They'll finish in the top 5, I pick, and I think they'll be, a nice finish to finish in the top 3. But they dominate the Big 12, but not on a national scale quite right now.
So, with Chandler Rogers, third time's the charm for him. What was that kind of like maybe for him to, finally reach the top? Like you said, he's been there 3 times and he's finally gotten that elusive Big 12 championship.
Yeah, well, his first 2 years there, he finished second. So
right.
His first year there, he gets to the championship round, loses. Last year, he's back, okay, like, this is my year, loses. So this year, he's probably having some of the same things go through his head, like, all right, I don't want to have that happen to me like the last 2 years. But he said, he felt really good about it, obviously. But he started off looking like he was going to pin the guy early, because Chandler Rogers, of any of OSU's wrestlers, he's the most likely to get a pin on any given day. And he just came out firing, kind of got him to his back, and his opponent kind of twisted and turned a little bit, got out of it. And from that point on, it was just kind of a back-and-forth affair. But since he scored those first few points, that ended up being the difference. I think he ended up winning by 3 or 4 points. But after the second the match was over, like, John Smith went up to him and was like, "You're going to win a Big 12 title on your belly. Like, that's how you're going to win it." So that's never the end goal for the Cowboys, and that's never the end goal for John Smith and his wrestlers. Like, yes, it's good for Chandler Rogers to get that first one out of the way. And, he was obviously really happy about it, but Smith is always thinking big picture, and he's trying to get his guys to kind of get in that same mind frame, that same mindset. Because we talk about it so much. With him, it's not so much that you win, it's how you win. It's one thing to win, 10-9. It's another thing to pick up a tech fall 15-0 or pin a guy. There's a difference. Like, there's levels to it.
How fun was it watching Dean Heil wrestle Bryce Meredith from Wyoming? Because, I mean, this is kind of a rivalry developing here now.
Well, that was probably the one I was most looking forward to out of all the championship matches, because Dean Heil had a 55-match winning streak, entering this year, and that kind of added up. So he had 55 straight wins, and then Bryce Meredith ended that streak, and that kind of started the little slump that Dean has kind of gone through this season. And so when I saw, you kind of assumed that was going to be the matchup from the very beginning, and that ended up holding to form. And so when you saw that matchup, it's like, okay, here's Dean Heil's chance to avenge his loss. He's kind of picking things back up. He's won, quite a few matches in a row after losing 3. And so if he wins that yesterday, fans and everyone would be like, okay, like, Dean Heil is definitely back. Like, he's definitely, back to form. He just knocked off the number 1 guy in the country. And it was a really, really, really good match down to the very end. Dean Heil had Meredith almost, like, turned. He almost, like, got some back points at the very end. And I honestly thought it was going to happen. If he would have had 5 to 10 more seconds, we might be looking at, Dean Heil, 4-time Big 12 champion. But Dean Heil winning the first three. It must be kind of sweet for Bryce Meredith to, get that fourth one, the first one in his senior year, I should say. But I expect these two to face off again in March. And even though Dean Heil has gone through this little slump and it's definitely puzzling, it's really hard to bet against him because he's one of those guys who he'd win, 4-3 against some of the best guys. He'd win 4-3 against some of the worst guys. But he's someone who's going to make all the matches close. But more often than not, he's going to come out on top. And it's better for him to go through these struggles now than to be going off in the regular season and the Big 12 tournament and then start slumping in nationals. Maybe now he can kind of figure out what's going on, and then he has 2 weeks before nationals to really, give it one last shot.
Well, I was just going to say, it's not the end, obviously, for him here. He's, like you said, you won't bet against this guy to, possibly get his third straight national title, because like you said, he's been dominant over the course of the past 2 years, and slump aside, like I don't think John Smith probably does. Well, he probably does, but I don't think really Dean Heil does. Do you think he cares that much that he lost 2 or 3 matches, whatever it was in the regular season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he definitely cares. Being someone who expects to be a national champion, he's always seeing number 1 next to his name, and not that I'm not saying he cares about the rankings and stuff. You kind of like as an athlete, you don't think about that. At least that's what I've been told. I'm not in their shoes. But you kind of have to ignore all that outside noise. But to not be where you were the past couple of years, that's got to be, pretty detrimental, like mentally, especially considering, it's your last year. You have a chance to win 3 titles, really, really cement yourself as one of the greatest OSU wrestlers of all time. And for a guy who hadn't lost in over a year before this year, it must be puzzling. And it's definitely something that's getting at him. And but he has the best coach in the country to kind of talk about those things with. And Coach Smith has said he's seen a lot of wrestlers go through slumps mid-season just to come back at the end and become a champion in March. So it's not over for Dean. I know this is bugging him for sure, but you can never count him out. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like you can't really count out LeBron James to make it to the finals. You can't count out Tom Brady, even though they lost the Super Bowl this year. So he's just one of those guys. He's in that echelon that you can't really you can never really count him out until it's all said and done.
Good old Patriots fan in the middle here. Real quick, so talking Jacob Smith, what's it been like watching the role he's kind of been on at the end here? He had the quick pin, to get himself to go to Cleveland this year. What's that been like, kind of watching him kind of hit this hot streak?
Well, it's Jacoby Smith.
Jacoby, excuse me.
Yeah, he's the most entertaining wrestler to watch for me. He's so strong. He just kind of out muscles and out physicals per se his opponents. He was a guy that didn't have D1 experience before this year, but he came here and he's just kind of he had a leg injury that he suffered against Missouri on January 27th, I believe, and so he just came back this weekend, and it was really good to see him get that first pin. He ended up losing to the number 1 ranked guy in his bracket, and that guy ended up winning that weight class. But it could have gone either way. There was one scramble that went. His name's Max Thompson, I believe, and went his way instead of Jacoby Smith's. He just kind of got turned there, and those were the points that ended up, granting him the victory. But, Smith came back, got another pin, finished 3rd, and I think that's kind of like that's a good finish for him, having that be his first action back from injury. He's been a really entertaining wrestler. Other than Cade Brock, he might be the most fun one to watch on the entire team, and so I'm looking forward to see what he does in March as well.
When we're talking Coach Smith, you talked about how sometimes enough's not enough with him, and maybe to a fault, but excellence is what he demands, and he knows obviously what it takes to win a world championship. And do you think that's my first question is? Do you think that's the approach that he brings? You're not wrestling in his eyes. It's not if you can win a Big 12 championship. It's, are you wrestling to the capabilities of winning a national championship, an international championship? Is that kind of how he views things, like the lens he views it through?
Yeah, I think anytime you have an athlete that's had just the amount of immense success that John Smith has, you're kind of always looking to push your guys, because he didn't get to that point by stopping when he thought it was enough. He got to that point by pushing his limits, and then once he thought he got to that limit, pushing that limit even more. So as someone who's won gold medals, as someone who's won national titles like John Smith, he probably sees his wrestlers and is like, okay, you think you can do this much, but you can actually do this much. And then once they do that much, he wants to see them do this much. He wants to see them push their limits time and time again. So like enough is never enough. Like it's what it's always been with Coach Smith. Almost every interview I've had with him, like in a group setting. I've never had any one-on-ones with him, but he's always looking for something more. He's rarely sitting back, arms folded, like satisfied, please, like, clapping along. And that's not to say that he doesn't encourage his guys. He does that a lot. He's one of the most animated coaches in college wrestling, but he's always trying to get more out of his guys. And I think that's what's made this program so great. You look at a guy like Nolan Boyd, who was a walk-on here a couple years ago, and he ended up being a 2-time All-American. No one expected that out of him, when he came here. So he just kind of turns guys and kind of shows them their full potential, I think. And it's up to them to realize that potential and to work for that. But, he drills it out of them, I think.
So I guess my other question is, you look at him, I think Coach Littell kind of fits that mold. We'll talk about Coach Littell in women's basketball coming up here in a little bit with Jordan Bishop on the next segment. But do you see, like, these coaches, is there a pattern forming? You look at those two. I think early on in Mike Boynton's career, we can agree he's a guy, not enough's not an enough kind of guy. He's happy with the early success, but they're all striving for perfection. These coaches are. Do you see that kind of a mold starting to form with some of these coaches that are having their jobs at Oklahoma State? Oh
yeah, I think that's kind of what you want and kind of what you expect. You're not going to want a coach who's going to, settle for a certain, like, let's just say, for instance, your basketball coach is like, okay, I want 20 wins, and after that, I'll be good. I don't think you'd ever really want a coach who's going to be like that. You're always going to want a guy who's going to be like, okay, what's next? I want to do more. I want to win more. So to kind of have that persona to where nothing's enough, I think that's good. I think, Kenny Gajewski, softball coach, he's obviously done a great job with the program here, and he's had some success at the national, top level at Florida. You mentioned Mike Boynton, who's done a really good job here in his first season, way outperforming expectations. You mentioned Coach Littell, Coach Smith, Coach Holiday. So I think Oklahoma State has a lot of good coaches who, have at least sniffed some pretty, high moments, some pretty top tier competition and stuff like that. And so I think what you're saying is true, and I think that's kind of what you expect. I don't think you'd want a coach who is okay with a certain number of wins or okay with a certain result, because nothing's ever good enough for like the true champions.
So real quick, not to take too much from what the team's done this year, but like for next year with some of these younger guys, the experience that they've been getting, where's this team going to go like next year? Do they, does it seem like maybe they'll have a higher ceiling?
Plus all their red shirts
coming
back.
Yeah, the red shirts. Is this going to be a dangerous team the next 3 years? Is this going to be the team that you're going to have to watch out for consistently? Not that they, you already do, but but now like where's this team going to go?
Yeah, let's not get anything twisted. They're definitely a team to watch this year. I'm just saying Penn State and Ohio State are definitely favored above them. But with that being said, they got Dayton Fix, who many think might be, the greatest wrestler right now in the world, pound for pound. He's redshirting. He'll come back at, 125 or 133. That's what I've heard. Nick Piccinini, so All-American last year. He just pinned a former NCAA runner-up yesterday for his second Big 12 title. So they'll have Piccinini and Fix, either 25 or 33. Cade Brock, I'm assuming he'll, go to 41 or maybe 33. And they'll be a really good team. They're pretty loaded, top to bottom. They have those red shirts coming back, so they're definitely gonna have a shot at the title next year, I believe.
It's gonna be fun to watch. Thank you so much for joining us, Luke. Again, Luke Garza from Pistols Firing, covers a multitude of sports. Head over to your Twitter account is
Luke A. Garza. Pretty simple. Won't put any numbers in there for you or anything.
Luke A. Garza. So that's where you can find all his work. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, cowgirl basketball did not experience the same level of success that wrestling did this past weekend. We'll be right back with Stillwater News Press's Jordan Bishop to break down what went wrong. This is OSU Student Radio. This is Border Battle on KXCY.